The word landed the way certain words do, not loud, not dramatic, just flat and certain, like something he'd already decided was true. "You're a burden," Marcus said. "We've been talking about it for weeks. There's a place in Glenside. It's nice. We're taking you on Thursday." His wife Dana stood behind him in my kitchen doorway, arms crossed, not quite meeting my eyes. The kitchen I had lived in for 31 years. The kitchen where I made Marcus's birthday cakes, where I helped him with homework at the table by the window, where he sat the morning after his father left, and I made scrambled eggs and didn't say a single word, because sometimes a child doesn't need words. He needs eggs, and a mother who is still there. I looked at my son. He was 44 years old. He had the expression of a man who has rehearsed something and is relieved to have said it. "Glenside," I said. "It's a good place," he said. Dana's aunt was there. "They have activities, a common room, a garden." "When did you decide this?" I said. He and Dana exchanged a look, not the look of people who have been surprised by a question, the look of people who had planned for several possible responses and were now selecting the appropriate one. "We've been worried," Dana said. Her voice was careful, the kind of careful that has been practiced. "A house this size, alone, it's a lot to manage. We just want you to be somewhere you'll have support." I looked at Dana, then I looked at Marcus. "You decided this without asking me," I said. "We knew you'd say no," Marcus said. Not unkindly, plainly, like this was the reasonable explanation. "And you thought that meant you didn't have to ask." Neither of them said anything. Dana looked at the doorframe. Marcus looked at the counter. In 31 years, I had watched a lot of uncomfortable people in that kitchen, and I had never been the one making them uncomfortable by standing still. "Okay," I said. That was all. Just okay. I went upstairs. I packed one suitcase, not because I was going to Glenside. I was not going to Glenside, but because the packing helped me think, the way physical tasks always help me think. I folded things carefully, the way I've always folded, and I thought about what to leave. On the kitchen island, when I came back down, I left an envelope, cream-colored, the kind I buy in bulk from the office supply store, my name in the corner as the return address, which was also the address of the house we were standing in. Inside the envelope, 3 documents. A copy of the property deed, my name, singular, no one else's, dated 31 years ago. A copy of the mortgage payoff confirmation from 11 years ago, also in my name. And a note, 1 page, handwritten, that said, "Marcus, the house you are planning to remove me from belongs to me. It has always belonged to me. If you would like to discuss Thursday, I'll be at Carol's. Call when you're ready to talk like adults. Love, Mom." Then I picked up my suitcase, called my sister Carol, and walked out my own front door. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to this channel, right now, before anything else. This is the place for every woman who has been called a burden in her own kitchen by someone she raised from nothing. Hit subscribe, then come back, because this story goes exactly where you think it's going, and further. My name is Lillian Marsh. I was 63 that year, and I want to tell you something about that house before I tell you anything else, because the house is the whole story. 31 years ago, I bought it alone. My ex-husband Warren and I had separated the year before, when Marcus was 12. Warren left for reasons I don't need to go into, because they are his reasons, and this is not his story. What he left behind was a mortgage on a small apartment I couldn't afford on my own, a 12-year-old boy who needed stability more than he needed anything else, and a choice that felt impossible at the time, and turned out to be the most important one I ever made. I let the apartment go. I spent 3 months looking at properties on a budget that most agents did not take seriously, driving to viewings on Saturday mornings, with Marcus in the passenger seat, asking if each one was going to be the one. He had opinions. Strong ones for a 12-year-old. Too small. Wrong street. Doesn't have a yard for a dog we didn't own, and I'd said we weren't getting. The house in Birchwood he didn't comment on until we pulled up. He looked at it through the windshield for a moment, and then he said, "The window in the front is nice." Which was the most Marcus could offer in terms of enthusiasm at 12, and I knew that was it. 3 bedrooms, a yard with an oak tree that had been there longer than the house, a kitchen where the morning light came in from the east the way mornings should come in. The school district was good. The street was quiet. The price was exactly at the edge of what I could make work. The down payment was my mother's savings, left to me when she died the year Warren left. The 2 losses arriving so close together that for a while I couldn't tell if I was grieving her, or the marriage, or just the feeling that the ground had gone unstable. She had worked as a seamstress for 40 years, alterations and wedding dresses and the occasional formal suit, in a small shop on Clement Street that smelled like steam and good fabric. She had saved with the discipline of someone who understood that what you build quietly is the only thing that lasts. And when she died, she left me an amount that surprised me because I had never known she had it, and I used every dollar of it on the down payment, and I thought about her every single month for 20 years when I wrote the mortgage check. When the mortgage was paid off 11 years ago, I sat at that kitchen table and cried. Not sad crying, the other kind, the kind that comes when something you've been carrying for a long time is finally set down and your body needs a minute to understand that the weight is gone. That house was mine. Every wall, every window, every morning of east-facing light. Marcus grew up in it. He had his own room, the one facing the backyard, and I painted it the color he chose, which was a very alarming shade of green, and which I repainted a more reasonable color the summer he left for college. He had his friends over, his homework spread on the kitchen table, his teenage years running in and out of that front door like it was a threshold with no weight to it. That's how children experience a home, like it has no weight, like it simply exists, the way air exists, and you don't think about where it comes from or what holds it up. He married Dana 8 years before that night in the kitchen. She's efficient and organized and has strong opinions about interior design, which I know because she redecorated their apartment 3 times in 2 years before they decided they needed more space. I watched that process with the careful attention I bring to everything, and what I noticed was that Dana sees spaces as things to be managed, rearranged, optimized. She is not sentimental about rooms. She is also not sentimental about people, which is a different thing, and it took me longer to understand that. The Glenside conversation had not appeared from nowhere. There had been months of smaller conversations before it, the kind that are each individually dismissible, but which add up to something you recognize only when you step back far enough to see the shape. There was the Sunday dinner, 8 months before, where Dana mentioned a friend whose mother-in-law had moved to a retirement community and how wonderful it was for everyone. She said it with the particular warmth of someone raising a topic they want to seem casual about. I said it sounded like a nice place. The subject moved on. I noted it. There was the phone call, 5 months before, where Marcus mentioned that the house was a lot for one person, and had I thought about simplifying. I said I thought about simplifying the way I thought about running a marathon, theoretically available to me, not something I was planning. He laughed, a little nervously, and we talked about something else. I noted that too. There was the visit, 2 months before, where Dana walked through the house in the way of someone doing quiet assessment. She commented on the upstairs bathroom needing updating, on the garage being underutilized, on the back bedroom being wasted as a guest room when guests barely come. Each observation landed like a small flag planted in unfamiliar territory, staking a claim that nobody had yet said out loud. I watched her do it. I said very little. I understood that the house had become, in their minds, a resource that was not being optimally deployed. The resource was me. The suboptimal deployment was that I was still in it. I want to be clear about what I mean by that. because it matters for understanding what came next. I do not think Dana is a scheming person. I think she is a practical one, and practical people look at situations and calculate, and what the calculation had produced was valuable property plus aging parent plus one heir equals a fairly obvious conclusion if you do the math without factoring in the person who built the thing. That is the error. Not cruelty, just incomplete accounting. What was claimed, in all those Sunday dinners and phone calls and room-measuring visits, concern for my well-being, worry about me alone in a big house, wanting me to have community, support, people around. What was also true, a 4-bedroom house in Birchwood had appreciated very significantly in 31 years. Marcus was the only child, and they had already, I was quite sure, had the conversation about what it might be worth. I did not confront any of this. I am not a confrontational person. I am a patient one, which is different, and patience is not the same as not noticing. Patience is noticing, and storing what you notice, and waiting for the moment when action is useful. The moment came on a Tuesday evening when my son stood in my kitchen and called me a burden. The thing about that word, burden, is that it contains a specific lie, and the lie is that the person being called a burden is somehow taking without giving, that they are a weight someone is carrying, rather than a person who has been doing the carrying. I had been doing the carrying for 63 years, and for 31 of them I had done it in that house, and the fact that Marcus had somehow arrived at the conclusion that I was the weight in the equation told me that the account had gone very wrong and needed to be corrected. The correction was the envelope. I want to be clear about something. I did not leave that envelope to be cruel. I did not leave it to punish Marcus or to win an argument. I left it because my son was operating with incorrect information, and I had learned in 34 years of billing work that incorrect information leads to incorrect decisions, and the most useful thing you can do when someone is about to make a serious error based on bad data is to give them the correct data and let them recalculate. The data was the deed. The correct calculation was, "This house is not yours to take me out of." Carol lives 12 minutes away, in a house she's owned for 22 years, in a neighborhood very similar to mine, with a porch that faces west, so her evenings are always good. She opened the door when I pulled up, looked at my suitcase, looked at my face, and said, "Tea or wine?" "Wine," I said. We sat on her back porch until midnight. She is 71, 4 years older than me, and she has watched every major thing happen in my life since we were children, sharing a room in our mother's apartment on Clement Street. She knew the broad shape of the Glenside situation because I had called her in September when the conversation started, when the Sunday dinner with the retirement community story happened, and she had listened and said what Carol always says, "You'll know when it's time to act, and when you do, act clearly." She did not say "I told you so," which is one of the many reasons I love her. "Did you leave the deed?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She nodded, sipped her wine. "Good." "He didn't know," I said. "I don't think he ever thought about it." "No," Carol said. "They never do, until suddenly it matters. We talked about our mother for a while, which we don't do as often as we used to. About the shop on Clement Street, and the way she smelled when she came home, like steam and good fabric. About how she would have felt about tonight. Carol thought she would have been furious. I thought she would have been pleased with the envelope, the precision of it. The way information delivered at the right moment is more powerful than any argument. She always said the most important thing is to know what you own, Carol said, and to have the paperwork, I said. We laughed, the way you laugh when something is both sad and exactly right. Marcus called at 9:47. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was the voice of someone expecting to manage a situation, to talk his mother through an emotional reaction and restore a previous arrangement. He called again at 10:12. Let it go. His voice was still managing, though with a slight edge of uncertainty that hadn't been there in the first call. The third call came at 10:58. By this time, Dana had read the documents, all three of them, carefully, and Marcus's voice was different in a way that told me the managing voice was gone. What had replaced it was the voice of a man doing recalculation. "Mom," he said, "call me back, please. I just need to talk to you." Carol heard the voicemail and looked at me over her wine glass. "Different voice," she said. "Yes," I said. "Good," she said again. I called him in the morning, from Carol's kitchen, with coffee, rested, ready. He asked if it was true, which told me some part of him had hoped the deed was a copy of something old and superseded, a document that no longer applied. "It's true," I said. "The house has been in my name since 1993. The mortgage was paid off in 2014. There is no co-owner, no lien, no other claim. It is mine, entirely and only." Silence. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't," I said. "You never asked." More silence. Then, "We were going to—" He stopped. "Yes," I said. "I know what you were going to do." A long pause. "The place in Glenside. We thought it would be better for you." More people, more. "Marcus," I said, "I need you to stop explaining what you thought would be better for me, and tell me what you actually thought would be better for you." The silence that followed this was different from the others. It had honesty in it. "The house is big," he finally said, "and Dana and we've been talking about needing more space." "I know," I said. "I've watched you talk about it for 8 months. Sunday dinners, phone calls, Dana measuring rooms. I have noticed every step of this conversation, even though no one included me in it." He didn't say anything. "What I need you to understand," I said, "is that the house you are planning to remove me from is the house my mother's life savings built. It is the house I bought alone at 32 with a 12-year-old who needed stability. I wrote a mortgage check every single month for 20 years, and I did not once ask anyone for help with it. Not you, not Warren, no one. That house is not a resource to be allocated. It is the thing I built. And calling me a burden in the kitchen where I raised you, is the most wrong I have ever heard you be." The conversation lasted 2 hours. Most of it was Marcus, sitting with the weight of what he almost did, not quite finding words, which I let happen. Some things need to be felt at full weight before they can be properly understood. I have learned this in 34 years of working with error. You do not rush someone past a mistake. You let them feel it completely, because the feeling is the thing that prevents the next one. He said he was sorry 3 times. The first 2 were reflexive, the automatic sorry of someone trying to end an uncomfortable moment. The third one came after a long quiet, and it was different, slower, heavier, the sorry of someone who has actually located the specific thing they're apologizing for. "I stopped thinking about what the house was," he said. "I started thinking about what it could be. I don't know when that happened." "I do," I said. "It happened when Dana started measuring the rooms." He didn't say anything. "She's not a bad person," I said. "She sees spaces, and she sees potential. That's not a flaw. The flaw was that neither of you stopped to ask whose space it was, or what it meant to the person who built it." I paused. "And the flaw was calling me a burden in the kitchen where I raised you." "I know," he said, very quiet. "I need you to understand something," I said. "That word, burden, told me that you had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a problem to be solved, and I cannot be in a relationship with someone who sees me that way. So this conversation is the beginning of fixing that, or it's the beginning of something much harder." He said it was the beginning of fixing it. "Then here's what happens next," I said. "I come home. The Glenside conversation is finished, permanently." And we have a real discussion about what this family actually looks like going forward, not what Dana has decided it should look like, not what's most convenient, but what's real and honest and fair to everyone in it, including me. He agreed. He came to Carol's that afternoon, without Dana, which showed some judgment. She opened the door, looked him up and down with the frank assessment of an older sister, and brought him to the kitchen where I was waiting. He looked older than 44 when he sat down. He had his father's way of holding himself when he's ashamed of something, very still, shoulders slightly forward, like he's trying to take up less space. He told me things about his marriage that I had been observing from a distance without the full picture. The pressure Dana was under at work, the pregnancy they'd lost the year before that they hadn't told anyone about, the way his life had started to feel like a series of logistics problems to be solved, and he'd let that thinking bleed into how he thought about everything, including me. He wasn't making excuses. He was trying to explain how a man who loves his mother arrives at calling her a burden, and the explanation, when I heard it fully, was less about cruelty and more about a person who had stopped paying attention to the things that couldn't be managed or optimized. I am one of those things. I told him about my mother's savings, the full story, things he had never known, because they had happened when he was too young to understand. And afterward, I had never thought to tell them. The seamstress shop on Clement Street. The Saturday mornings he sat in the passenger seat of a car that needed a muffler, being too old to hold my hand, but not quite too old to want to. The way he said the window in the front was nice, and I knew that was it. By the end, he knew the full weight of what he'd been standing on without knowing it. He cried. The specific kind of crying that comes when you understand something you should have understood years ago, and I let him cry without rushing it, because he needed to feel the whole thing. Dana and I had our own conversation a week later, just the two of us. Marcus arranged it and wisely did not attend. She's more controlled than Marcus, less given to the kind of crying that comes from genuine reckoning. But she is not dishonest, and she sat across from me for 90 minutes and did not once try to manage her way out of what had happened. She said she had not understood that the house had a history, that she had thought of it as property because she has spent her whole adult life in apartments where property is interchangeable, and that she had not thought about what it meant that this one was different. She asked me to tell her how I bought it, so I told her. She asked about my mother. I told her that too. By the end, she was quieter than I'd ever seen her, and she asked, carefully, if I thought there was a way forward that worked for everyone. Yes, I said. But it starts with being honest about what everyone actually needs, including me, not what's convenient, what's real. I can do that, she said. I believed her. The house is still mine. It will remain mine for as long as I am in it. What happens after that is a conversation we are having now, openly and honestly, with everyone's interests on the table, which is how it should have been from the start. I still make birthday cakes in that kitchen. The light is still good in the mornings. The window still faces east. Some things you build quietly, and they last, because that's what quiet building does. My grandmother knew that. Now, finally, my son does too. Subscribe to this channel, please. Every story here is for the woman who built the floor everyone else is standing on and got called a burden for it. Hit subscribe. Here is what I'd leave you with, plain as I can say it. If someone calls you a burden, look at what you're actually carrying. Look at what exists in the world because of your quiet work. Look at the walls, the windows, the years. A burden is a weight that drains the person holding it. What you are, what most of the women in these stories are, is a foundation. A foundation does not drain anyone. It holds everything up. The people standing on it simply forgot to look down. The envelope was not revenge. It was a correction. A set of facts given to someone operating on wrong ones, that is the only power I needed. The truth, plainly presented. At the moment, it could actually land. My name is Lillian. The house is mine. and the morning light in my kitchen is still exactly the way I chose it.